My LEGO Loco remake is almost finished and plays just like the original. You can build your cities and watch all of the minifigs wander about, except it has one big problem that completely ruins the gameplay, and it's been causing me so much pain and wasted time during development. What is this issue? Well, let's get straight into it. When I'm working on the game, or playtesting it, or recording footage for the videos like I am right now, I need to actually have a city built with whatever I'm focusing on in place. So for the minifig episode, I needed a bunch of buildings and paths to see if they would spawn and walk around. Or the train episode, which required a depot and a whole bunch of tracks for the trains to drive along. So I'd have to set up these things in-game. And up to this point, I've been building a fresh world every single time, because when I close the game, all that data is gone. And so it's finally time to implement a system to save and load your worlds. This one feature saved my game. Get it? Well, anyways, onto the technical stuff. The first step of making this feature was actually to set up all of the UI for the saves. And like I mentioned in a previous episode, it's basically the exact same screen as the background selector. So I just copied that and tweaked a few bits. For the save menu, however, there's a tab that opens up before this, where you can choose which function to use: save, load, or erase. The first menu is a little weird, as they could have just had a load, save, and erase button all on one screen, but that's beside the point. I set up the first screen, and in here is the same guy that's been in the pause menu and 4 buttons. I set up the guy to point at whatever button has been hovered over, just like the pause menu, and he was all done. The close button obviously closes the menu, but the other 3 all call a function in the save manager that changes what state it is currently in, be that saving, loading, or erasing. Either way, this function then switches the screen to the selection menu. This menu uses the simple scrolling list that I wrote for the other menus and needs to be populated with save files, so I had to actually program all of that first. To design the save files, I had to think of what it is that I need to save. Do I need to save what buildings are placed down? Yes. Do I need to save the geese that are flying overhead? Probably not. So I started by creating a new struct called save data, which is what is saved to the disk and read by the game. The first field was a save name, because that felt pretty obvious. That's literally just a string that can be read and written very easily. When you save the file, it just takes whatever it is you've typed into the text box and saves it in the file, as well as naming the file word.save. .save is literally just a text format, so it can be edited with a notepad, which isn't a secure way to handle it, but that literally doesn't matter to me, and if people want to type out a world instead, be my guest. I needed to save the backdrop in here, so I simply stored a string for the backdrop's name, which again is easy to set, and then I could pass that to the backdrop selector to grab the correct one from the list and set it up. The next thing to consider was the little preview window in the menu, to show a rough idea of what your city looks like. So let's take a look at the original game to get a better understanding of this feature. So here's a typical city with some houses, a road, and a train line all around it. And if I go into the save menu, you can see this little window here, where every space is represented by a single pixel. Train tracks are black, decorations are green, buildings are brown, paths are dark grey, and the roads are light grey. This little feature is a really nice way to preview what the save looks like. Luckily for me, it wasn't too hard to recreate. All I had to do was create a brand new texture with the dimensions of the world's grid, and then go through each cell in the array and set it to a color depending on what state that tile is in. So if it's empty, make that transparent. If it's a track, make it black, stuff like that. This is all handled by a function in the object manager, and that's called when you go to save a file. But the problem was then, how would I actually store this texture? There's a few ways to store a texture in a file, and I basically chose to ignore solutions on Stack Overflow and went for the worst option. So the simplest way is to encode the texture to a PNG or a JPEG and save it as a separate file with the same name to load it up together. But I wanted it all in the same file, because why not? So instead what I did was wrote 2 functions. One to convert a texture to a string, and another to convert a string to a texture. The texture is simply run through this and comes out as a base64 string, which is saved in the file alongside everything else. That's loaded when you preview a save, and it all looks really good. Now it's time to look at the buildings, which is by far the largest chunk of the save file. I created a struct called building save data, which stores the building's name, position, index, rotation, and a list of all minifigs that have already spawned from the building, which is also why I created a struct for the minifig save data that stores the name and type of minifig. Then in the save manager, I wrote the function out to save all of this data for every single building object in the object manager. So for each building, it creates a new set of data, copies in all of its information, and then within that, does the same for every minifig in the building. This data is stored in a list of buildings that is saved in the overall save data once these loops are finished. And with all of the save data in a single struct, that is simply written to a file using the JSON utility class. And with all that in place, the game was able to create save files perfectly. After a few iterations with a whole bunch of save ruining bugs, but you hopefully won't experience those. So here's what a save file actually looks like inside. I didn't do much formatting to these, so they're incredibly long, because each building takes up 10 lines, and you can have hundreds of them, but you can still see all of the information very easily. This save file is called trains. It uses the green mile background. This text here, when converted back into texture, will be the resulting preview, and then a massive list of buildings and objects. So there's a train depot at 5.7 with the alternate index of 1, which is how it knows which way the depot should be facing. And then I can scroll all the way down this list and you can see all of the tracks, paths, stations, and houses in place. Right down at the end here, you can see this house, B6_house_5, has 2 minifigs, Maggie the baby and Goober the kid. These have been spawned previously, so need to appear again once the file has been loaded. And the same for B2_house_1 as Andrea the grandma. So I had a save system in place. It was then time to implement the inverse of everything I've just done and load this file back into the game, which is mostly just literally doing it all backwards, but there are some extras I need to consider. First, it checks if that file actually exists or not, and then gets to work loading in all of the data. The backdrop name is passed into the selector, which then tries to load it from its own list, which is simple enough, but then comes the buildings and minifigs. As different saves have different minifigs, I created a new function to delete all of them and start fresh. So it simply destroys all of the minifig objects and clears the list ready for the new lot. And then the building data is passed into the object manager, which handles the rest. First, like the minifigs, any buildings currently in the world are destroyed and the grid is cleared. And then, by iterating through the building data, it spawns a new copy of each building by selecting the scriptable object that it's based off of, which is the building name in the data. It sets up the sprite with the index in the same way and then places the building down, making sure to pass in the minifig data it has stored. Once the building has been instantiated, every minifig from the building pops out, ready to wander the cities once more. Do this for every building, and the loading is complete. The extra bits that I had issues with during the development were things like ensuring that the undo queue is cleared when you load a file, all the minifigs are properly disposed of and aren't wandering about a city that isn't theirs. I did also notice a few issues I had with the layering on the buildings that have multiple parts, like the clock tower or traffic lights, but that was an easy fix and the system was complete. So now, after 7 months of development, I can save test worlds and don't have to rebuild them every single time I stop the game or have to change a line of code. This was one of the last features that needed to be made and was actually the final feature I wanted to have in place before anyone played the game, because I felt like a game without a save system would be pretty terrible. And with that in place, I wanted to share my game with my internal game testing team, which is just my sister. So I needed a way to share this project, and the best way to do that was to set up an itch.io page for the game. And that page is actually live right now. If you can find it and guess the secret password, you can play this game. What a tease. I've used itch.io plenty of times in the past, but the one thing I've never done is use their app or their build release tool, Butler. If I make a build of the game and just upload it the old-fashioned way, you would have to re-download the entire project again every single time. But what Butler and the app allow me to do is simply release patches, which makes keeping the project up to date easy. It means there's no pointless downloading. So to start, I set up Butler on my PC, which is a command line tool, which I'm not really a huge fan of. This could be a feature built into the itch app, but that's fine. After logging in and authorizing a device, you can run a single command to release the latest build, which is Butler push a file path to a zip folder containing the game, and then my username and game followed by the platform it's released on. So it looks like this in the command line. Butler push C:game dev blah 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 LEGO LOCO remastered.zip Geeze / LEGO LOCO Windows OS. And that pushes the latest build to itch and will make that available as an update, only downloading the files that are new. So instead of downloading a 300 megabyte game every time I change something, it just downloads the 10 megabytes or whatever that's different. And with all that set up, maybe it's time for people to actually play this game, huh? So here's how I'm going to do this. There's still a few missing features and a few bugs in the game, but people want to play it, so why not? Over on my Patreon, I'm going to be releasing a few posts about how you can play the game. To begin with, it'll only be for members because I don't want some bad issues popping up and ruining everything. But this isn't me paywalling it or whatever. You don't have to pay anything and it will be free to play. As soon as I know the game actually works, it'll be available for everyone. I'll make sure to update the description with the latest links to the game, so if you're watching this in the future, it might already be there. There's currently builds for both Windows and Linux, because I know people were asking for a Linux build. However, I don't actually have a system with Linux on, so if you have issues, please tell me and I'll figure something out. But go and check the description right now if you're looking to play this classic game. But that's going to do it for today, and this was a pretty big milestone for this project. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am, and as always, let's round it off with another edition of Subscriber Wars. Thanks to all the VIPs in the arena like Steve Nelson, Mark Davis, Hardus, Clayton Belcher, Jake Lee, Matthew Timbrook, Jacob Erickson, and making their VIP debut, Space Girl Series. I appreciate the support. Now let's get this battle started. As they'll scrap it out, I just want to say for those that are giving the game a go when I release it, I would highly recommend once again downloading it through the app. There's still a few things that are rather broken, especially around the trains, and I'll be releasing fixes as I go, so that will help you play the best version of the game as they're available. But back to the action here, and we're already down to the final few. I can see Sen Swain is still in there, along with David Marrell, Jordan Ludlam, and it's Hwandi. Sen and David take each other out there, and health-wise, it's looking like Hwandi has this one won. But there is someone hiding at the bottom still. Bernie Reddy hiding in the zone. It's the final fight, and Hwandi takes Bernie down. Congratulations to It's Hwandi, you are today's winner, and thank you all for watching. Don't forget to leave a like down below, and let me know what else you want to see from this project. Subscribe if you haven't already to keep up with future updates, and check out my Patreon page for a link to the game, as well as some other bits and pieces. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.